Welcome to the Relationships Inside Out podcast with Doctors Gregory Siebert and Kimberly Murray, licensed marriage and family therapists. Join them on this journey as they explore the ins and outs of relationships.
Well, welcome to Relationships Inside Out. Today, we're going to talk about how to get through the holidays, tips to protect our mental health.
Yes, it's a hard one. We've done an episode before about holidays. So if you haven't listened to that one, I recommend checking that one out too. But holidays is one of those times where we expect all the joy, the love, the family connection, and then often it just goes to shit.
Yeah, and most of us probably know that it goes to shit, and so we're not looking forward to it. And the caveat thing here is that you don't need a mental health diagnosis to experience stress during the holidays.
Truth.
It's just stressful in general. There's a lot more, I think, depending on your culture, there's a lot more pressures of what's happening. The holidays are coming up for us here, our Thanksgiving and
Christmas.
Yeah.
It's tough because it's also paired for some with the winter blues, right? So as fall approaches, for some people, their serotonin dips and naturally they have a lower mood, lower energy. And then you pair that with family stress.
Yeah.
And by the time we get through this season, January feels real hard. And our hope is that through talking about this, January is still going to be a struggle because the fun is over and the winter blues are still there. But hopefully you're not walking in with a ton of additional stress.
Yeah.
Come that turn of the new year.
And it could come from a myriad of reasons. Maybe the holidays you are alone when society is like, this is a time to be with everybody. And that puts pressure on us. So we'll talk a little bit about that and potentially some ways to navigate that. And we've talked about that in previous episodes, but we want to do this every year because this is a real phenomenon that we're all impacted by and plays a role. I think a big one is just, what do you want the holidays to look like and setting a goal for that? Do you want a big old party? Do you want it quiet? Do you want to host? Do you want to go to someone's house versus somebody else's,
Who are the people you want to be around? Who do you not want to be around? As part of setting my goal, I'm going to be intentional, not just about the what, but the who, the when, all the things.
Yeah, this is your holiday too.
We forget that part, right? And for some, that familial loyalty of, but this is just what we do. Or, but my mom always hosts Christmas Eve. We have to be there. Or she'll be upset.
You mean the guilt trips of, don't be selfish. It's the holidays.
Oh, golly. What's funny is almost every client on my caseload right now, we're talking about the holidays and prepping for it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No one's immune to this. Well, not no one, but the vast majority of people are not immune to this. And kind of picking through, I really want to just be home with my family, with my kids. But my mother-in-law, my mom, sorry, women, we're worse for this. Maybe my dad are pressuring me to go on a trip with them, to go to their house, to whatever it might be.
Are you going to pressure your daughters when they get older?
No, of course not. Right?
I just have this feeling that you're going to be hosting all of the holidays.
My door will be open. So in 20 years, when they're going through this, please play this back for me, okay?
Yes.
When I said I wouldn't do that to them.
I'll give them the specific recording and the timestamp of what that.
I would never pressure my children. Okay, maybe I would. It's hard because we want to be with our kids. We want to be with kinship, and it doesn't come without stressors.
And it's an important factor because we're not just talking about the people making a decision of what you want to do or not do, because it's already difficult enough in the couple relationship if you have different needs and you have different pressure from both sides of family. If we're talking about a dyad, right? But then there's the side of the dyad, like maybe the older generation that's been hosting for a while, to change the perspective of what it means if somebody doesn't want to show up.
Oh, it can feel boundaries. Personal. It can feel like
they don't love us.
They feel rejected.
And it is sad. I mean, if you've been having the same tradition for a long time and you've been really the focal point for that, and then the family's growing and they're kind of getting their own traditions themselves, and you see the numbers drop year after year in your holidays, it's very sad.
Feel lonely.
Yeah.
And if you introduce grandkids, obviously Chris and I have experienced this phenomenon. When it was just him and I, it's like slight pressure, but like no one really cared. As soon as you have kids, now the pressure is on. We want to be with our grandkids. We don't want to miss their first one. We don't want to miss their second one because now they actually give a shit that it's Christmas. Whatever, you name it. That pressure is so hard because I also don't want to keep my kids away from their grandparents. They enjoy them. It's not just about grandparents enjoying grandkids or what have you. It's also, what does it mean for my kids?
Yeah.
That's hard.
There's just a lot of decisions that have to go in this. That's part of the stress too. And then when the decisions can't be made because there's different needs and pressures from different directions. So setting the goal of what you want to look like, because that will really help set up the boundaries that you need to put in place to make sure that you are navigating in a direction that's going to give you the outcome you're looking for. Whether that, again, hosting a huge party or being quiet and wanting your own little thing and maybe having like a second holiday party with family at another time.
Perfect example, what you just said there of a solution for that is also thinking about, does it have to be on the day of? Could we, for example, like for us for Christmas, my husband's extended family all lives near, and there's a lot of pressure to do it on the day of. Chris and I have been really firm about
Day of.
Nope, we ain't doing that. So they've now, my in-laws, in honor of respecting our boundaries as well as their own, quite frankly, have this year agreed to host a week before Christmas. That way everyone can still come, and then we can all enjoy our Christmases how we so choose, right? So you could do a week before, a week after, you could do the day before, day after, but allow yourself to be, as best you can, open to all the possibilities rather than the rigidity of the day, unless it's super important to your family, right?
But that is one religious,
But that is one solution that you can consider. It's just altering it just a little bit in that way.
Yeah, and you might get some guilt trips later on of, I haven't hosted the day of in a couple of years now. It's never my turn.
Oh, golly. We've heard that more than twice.
One thing that I think would be important if you're trying to figure out what those goals look like is really tap into your values as your family.
Yeah.
What do you want? What are your values and what do you want to come and play here? Again, not all values are going to be present every day, every hour. But if you were to have control, what do you want your values, especially in the context of family and holidays? Take, for example, you have a value of family. Does that, take precedence over the stress of like, we're just going to go and, my family is important to me. Having the holiday party the day of is more important to them than it is for me. So I'm going to maybe just, show up and be there, and we'll create our own thing outside of that as well.
Or splitting the day. I hear a lot of families that say, like, again, I'm bringing up Christmas because that's what's familiar to me as a Christian centric holiday. Doesn't mean that's the only holiday we're talking about here. But maybe Christmas morning is just your little unit, and then the afternoon you have family dinner, or Christmas Eve you're with family, but Christmas Day you're not. There's a lot of ways to do that still honor those values.
And it's very challenging us talking about it because there's this balance of flexibility and also establishing boundaries.
Our families, I think, at this point just expect boundaries because that's kind of what we preach, and that's how we live as therapists. It took time for me to get to this place, though. This isn't like one year I decided to have boundaries and it just went lovely.
Well, and I think about the flexibility too, is be flexible what the day looks like, but maybe have boundaries of when the day is, or just like you said, maybe we split the day.
How long are we going?
Yeah.
We will be there for 2 hours. We will be there. We must be leaving the home. For one of my clients, they like to read their kiddo a book every Christmas Eve, a particular book. And so they set the limit of by 6:30, we are out the door. If dinner's running late, if people are running late, tough shit, we're out the door by 6:30. It's not changing.
Yeah.
So you can set limits in that way too, of how long are we there? What time do we show up? What time do we leave? Things like that. And
so you're hitting on another tip, right? So the first one is setting goals. The next one would be time. And that's the time, like you said, like how long are we going to be there for? But it also includes how long you're going to shop for, or how long are you going to scroll for? How much time are you spending and allocating to finding the perfect gift? Maybe you set a time. I got 2 hours to buy gifts for 3 people. And that's it. Once that 3 hours is up, it's done. Because the time that it takes to try to make this holiday how you want it might be overwhelming.
And that can be time with cooking, time with prepping, time with decorating.
That's it. 1 hour turkey. If it's not done, I don't care.
Just 1 hour. Everyone's getting sick. Everybody's getting
it. For me, Merry Christmas. Here's your gift. Sickness.
Gifts. Kate, Greg knows my soapbox on this. I'm not a gift giver. Like, that is my bottom love language. For some people, that's their top or near their top.
Yeah.
But if gifts aren't important to the receiver, especially, maybe it's not a gift. Maybe it's that they want time. Maybe they want an experience. Maybe they want something different. So also being willing to open up, especially in terms of time or in terms of boundaries, what you want there.
Mhm.
Is gifts important to us? Do we want to spend time opening up 4,000 gifts on Christmas? Or do we want to use that time differently?
Yeah.
It's an important consideration.
And in that,
Mhm.
actually communicating that to people.
What? You have to talk about it.
Don't just assume what people know what you need. If you don't need gifts, that's fine.
Yes.
Or maybe the gift is like an experience. So you bought them like a gift card to somewhere that they go do something as a family.
Plan a date night with that person, not like a literal date, but
Yeah.
like a friend date, or take your mother-in-law out to get her nails done or whatever.
Yeah. And the time limit, I think I can't stress enough as one of the tips.
Yes.
We get lost in it. It's everywhere you go. You go to the stores, it's the ambiance, it feels good. Set boundaries around that and limits of what you're willing to spend time on and what you're not. Because along with the holiday stuff, you still need to prioritize your relationship. You still need to prioritize your own mental health. And so by setting parameters on the holiday stuff, which actually for a lot of us serves as a good distraction,
True.
It can sometimes neglect some of the other things like self-care. And
so we talked about setting a goal. I'm going to couch time under a general umbrella of limits, right? Limits in terms of time, but also limits in terms of finances, in terms of the things we do and do not do. So let's talk about finances. That's another one. People often exit the holiday season far more in debt than they started.
And that's the stressor. This is why it's part
Huge.
of the stressor. Yep.
And that stressor then doesn't just end. It continues throughout the year as you're trying to make that back up. Especially as here in America, we are entering a silent recession or in a silent recession. Finances are big right now for people.
Oh, you think that's going to stop people trampling over each other Friday?
Golly. Black Friday is like its own animal.
Probably even worse because people are struggling.
And so we need the deals.
Yeah.
But how do we set a budget and stick to it? How do we, as a unit, and I mean a bigger unit, like a whole, not just like me and my four, but including our extended family of this year, let's not do gifts. All of us need to save our pennies. So let's save our pennies, right? Or let's all put in a pool to go to a really nice dinner as a family, something like that. But not being afraid to set your budget. For some reason in our culture, this idea that the more someone spends on you, the more they love you has kind of gotten indoctrinated into a lot of what we do.
Yeah.
And my hope is there can start to be a shift of that. How do we talk about that as a family? How do we, as a partnership, talk about our finances? How do we, as a bigger unit, talk about what budget or gifts looks like? But it's an important piece of this. Otherwise, that stress is going to follow you well out of the holidays.
Yeah. And there's values underlying that too, is what do you actually want to spend money on? My wife does not like spending money on like physical gifts.
Yeah.
She wants experiences. Spend time, quality time.
I always knew I loved Taylor.
If you have to spend money, let's put it into like for us, a savings account. Right.
A trip fund,
something. If that's what you're gonna do, then money. We don't want any material things because both of us are very like kind of minimalist in that way, minimalist-esque. I would not be saying I'm a purist, but that's really important to communicate because you will get the grandparents and stuff who are just, I have to buy this toy. I have to buy this toy for your kid. Or our grandchild.
And it's hard because yes, for kids, gifts are important. So having some, sure, if that works for your family. Remind me to come back to the grandparent gift thing because that is also part of limit setting. But one thing we also do is we do what's a wide envelope in our tree and we pick, or our kids pick. So this year, Skylar could theoretically pick, she wouldn't know the actual charity name, but a topic, pick a charity and then we donate in that wide envelope.
Yeah.
And on Christmas, we open to see what charity it went to. So one of us picks, and then that's part of our gift giving is not just material goods, but giving to our community or giving time to our community.
I like receiving. I don't like giving.
100% totally agree.
But going back along with what you're saying, the value based, that's a value, right? Giving.
Yep.
And I think that's a discussion too that you have to have around finances is what are we willing to spend money on? If we're going to spend money, where do you want to spend it that we feel comfortable with that's in line with our values, which isn't talked about often. And this is a bigger conversation for maybe we've already had an episode on finances, but who controls it? Who makes that decision? And that's a whole different animal. Yeah.
And if finance is a struggle for you to talk about, I do recommend listening to that episode because it can give a base of how do we approach this conversation rather than just avoid it.
Yeah.
Which if you listen to that episode, that's kind of my preference, but It's a terrible preference. Definitely a toxic trait to avoid finances. Getting better, you'd be proud. But we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because when January hits and all the fun's over, and then I look at that credit card bill and oof, we way went out of our budget.
Yeah, but sometimes you got to know your limits too. Like I know myself. I'm a retail therapist, right? I like to buy stuff for my own mental health, and so I'm glad my wife is
keeping you in check.
Yes. So
It's here for
you got to know your limits, right? That feels good sometimes. I'm like, I'm in a shitty mood. I need new shoes.
Yes.
And then I'm great for 6 hours.
You bring up an important point. Giving is one of those tricky ones because not only does it feel good to the receiver to get something, but we get a dopamine hit when we give. It's just being mindful in how much we're giving and in what way we're giving, right? We do want to give, whether that's time or volunteering or gifts, whatever, because it's good for the body. We know that giving improves our mental health. We know it helps with gratitude. It helps with humility, and responsible giving is important.
As you're talking about that, I just can't stop the image of the families. And it's also happened in my family a lot. Is there's people in your family who are really good and thoughtful about gifts. And they're also very, very hyper vigilant about how you respond when you open those.
I don't know anyone in my family like that.
So one aspect of this, the side of the coin, is don't have expectations of how people respond to gifts.
Preach, Greg. You've never said anything better.
Excuse me, just kidding.
As a non-emotive person, I'm a pretty, like, believe it or not, when I open gifts, I am non-emotive.
Okay.
And so, example, and my in-laws wouldn't care that I share this. When I was, I'm going to say 17, 18, my in-laws gave me a camera. And I opened it. It was my first camera. Yeah, I'm showing my age a little bit. It was a digital camera.
Oh, 2 megapixels.
And I opened it and I said, thank you. I really like it. That was the extent of my reaction.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law was so hurt because she thought I didn't like it. And for 18 years now, we've been working on my non-emotiveness, much like Harper, with opening gifts does not mean I don't like it. It doesn't mean anything about the gifts. It just means when people are staring at me, I shut down. I'm not going to show you much emotion. I can love things on the inside and not show it on the out. Skylar, Chris, very emotive. They get excited. They're animated. I
can literally tell that when Skylar ran up to me this morning. Very emotive. And then Harper.
Hey.
I'm like, oh God, what's teenage years going to look like?
She's my spirit animal. But you bring up such a good point of, if you're going to give the gift, give it without condition.
Yeah.
Give it without expectation. It is not about getting the praise, the accolades, and all the extra shit that comes with it.
It's the process of that. You know, you were thoughtful. You knew that you really thought about who they were, and maybe they don't even recognize the benefit and appreciation right there in that moment. And that shouldn't be the tell all.
Yes.
And it shouldn't matter what they think. My wife has this saying, and I just like, it's taken me a while. She's training me. But she would be like, sometimes it's like, my presence is their gift. Like, I spent time to go here. I spent time in saying, I'm taking time out of my day. And she values that so much that's like, that should be enough. And then if there's a gift, it's like, just the fact that I got them one, that should be all that matters.
100%.
And that's such a healthy perspective. It's also on my side. I'm like, oh my God, that's heartless. But I've learned, and I'm like, okay, I get it, because think about it on the other side, that you are upset because they didn't get you exactly what you wanted. And I'm going to call myself out as a little child. I didn't get my exact Power Ranger toy.
We all have that toy. I didn't get my life-size Barbie. It still haunts me.
It doesn't haunt me, but I just know I was like,
does.
Mine was a little bit more like ups and down, because I got the toy. And I'm like, oh my God, it's what I looked. And I looked in the back, and it was the one that was wired, not fully remote. Okay. I deserve that. I was entitled.
Was?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
But the point being is, do not put any merit or any weight on how people respond.
We give without condition. Some people are going to be really expressive. Some people aren't. Yeah. Some people will tell you they love it even if they don't. Some people are going to show that they're disappointed.
And especially do not put that on grandchildren.
Oh, can I get an amen?
Do not put it on kids in general. Like, we're thinking that they actually have the conscious thought to say, this gift is shit.
I really love this sweater you knitted me, Grandma.
So, yeah, this gift is shit. And because it's shit, I don't love you anymore. Because that's what kids are thinking, not like.
Or this idea, they open it up and then they toss it to the side and go the next one. They just want to open shit. Later, they will come back
they're just
to
like
the
dopamine
gift.
stuff. It's like materials, right?
That's the Skylers of the world. The Harpers of the world, we literally have to do one gift about every half an hour. She doesn't do more than 4 gifts a day. So Christmas takes us well into the new year because for her, it's too overwhelming. She doesn't like that much stimulus.
And going with our profession as marriage family therapists, we care about balance. So the other side of the coin is, so the one we just talked about was do not put weight on people's responses. The other side is for the people who are responding, work on your responses. Jesus Christ.
It doesn't come natural, Greg. If I try to bullshit and be like, this is so great, they're going to read it's phony all over my face.
It doesn't have, I mean, be you and be natural.
Yeah, my mother-in-law would
But
disagree.
at least at the very minimum, say, thank you. This is very thoughtful. I appreciate you thinking of me. You really, I think, went above and beyond here.
A grateful heart, sure.
Not just, and my parents really, I think, beat this into us as a kids. Not literally beat us, but
I'm a mandated reporter.
And they were like, you have to say thank you. You have to say thank you.
Which I can agree with. Gratitude's important here.
So just work on expressing that a little more. If you know that people are sensitive to it, work on it for those individuals. Just meet them halfway. It takes 2 to tango, and that's the role of the people who are receiving at the time. So,
and that, again, going back to the central point of this is protecting your mental health, right? Giving helps our mental health.
Yeah.
Saying thank you and showing gratitude also helps our mental health.
And the caveat that we just talked about was giving does help your mental health until you make it conditional upon someone's response.
Correct.
Yeah, which is
fair point.
Another one, and maybe the last one that I'm thinking of for a tip is.
I have one more for limits.
Oh yeah,
for limits. Going back to the grandparent thing, limits in terms of saying no to things. Saying no is important. So throughout the holidays, there's going to be
it's a big one.
Pumpkin patches and family gatherings and Christmas plays and all the shit. Okay. Pick out your top 1, 2, 3, whatever feels good for you, and say no to everything else. This idea that we have to attend every single thing, that we have to put up the most Christmas lights, that we have to be the most involved, it's killing couples and families. Like it is just, it's exhausting. It assumes that you don't already have all these other stressors, right? If you're already busy and then I'm telling you to have 15 activities.
What do you mean? If you don't show up to mine, that means you don't care about me.
Well, that's probably true. It's really hard to say no. And it is so important, not just for you individually, but for your relationship, if you have children, for your mental health, to set those limits. Saying no also means, now it's unpopular, so I'm warning you. Like we set a gift limit in our house where grandparents are allowed to give our kids 3 gifts each, 3 price tagged gifts, not a bag that has 15,000 things in it. Been there, but 3 independent things. Last year, we allowed 1 to be a toy, and then the other 2 had to be experience, college or career fund.
Yeah.
Something of the sort.
Love that.
Clothes, books, art, and then they can get 1 toy. Don't be shy to set those limits. If you've got those family members that bring 15 gifts and it takes forever and your kid clearly is overwhelmed and your house is busting at the seams, set your limit. Say no. And for ours, they know if they go over, we will return something. And then we take that money and donate it. And that's hard for people to accept and latch onto. And for our house, it's actually really important for especially my oldest mental health, for our house to not be so cluttered. But also, we don't want to spend all of Christmas opening gifts. Christmas to us also has a religious component and a family component.
I just like the gifts. We don't even eat. Just show up.
Just all the gifts. All the gifts.
I mean, no goes through all of that. No to what I want my holiday to look like. So I have to say no to a lot of things.
Yep.
No to what we want to spend money on.
No to who?
No to who. And then this other one I want to talk about was intentionally spend time doing the things that you enjoy that may not even be holiday related. So you're saying no to these other things to make time, like even no to time you spend on shopping.
Mm-hmm.
No to spending more than 2 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that all opens up time for engaging in things that you want to do that are enjoyable. Go seeing fall colors, maybe doing things with just your little unit by yourselves up in the mountains, if you have mountains wherever you live, or in a small, cute town somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But something that is important for your mental health that,
Absolutely.
rejuvenates you.
Also being intentional. I love this intentionality about saying yes to things. It's not just about the holiday stuff, like you said. It's also saying yes to eating healthy.
Yeah.
It's saying yes to extra sleep. It's saying yes to remaining active in the gym or in movement, right? Not losing some of those foundational self-care things that we need.
Yeah.
To date night with our spouse, to doing things that have nothing to do with the holidays, just to maintain me as a person. That is so important to get through this with our mental health protected.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm not saying, well, I'm just going to eat all the cookies and forget the gym. And then come January, I say January for our culture, for our country, January is that time when we see that mental health tank for people.
Yeah.
It's just a marker for it. But if you can protect it throughout, that dip isn't nearly as bad.
Yeah. And notice we didn't really talk about, and intentionally did not talk about, that we continually buy gifts for ourselves to feel good, and then doing, like, intentionally trying to find materialistic things to boost your dopamine. And January comes around and all that stops for everybody.
Yep.
And this is why you see the dip, is because of how we spent our time and our expectations to get that fix we needed through the holidays. So going out and engaging in that consumerism to that level where you're not spending time on your own self-care, and the things that matter, that aren't materialistic, that actually are predictors of happiness, like relationships, gratitude.
I also tell people to be intentional about planning that January, February, March for America, that time period afterwards. So we're not just planning the holidays, we're planning, what are some fun things I'm going to do in January? Because the holiday, all the family time, all the like holiday spirit comes to a screeching halt in New Year's.
Yeah.
If we can plan activities preemptively for, like, I'm going to have a girls' night in the middle of January, whatever, it allows that joy to keep going. Like, we already have our March trip planned.
Yeah.
That can be really helpful in buffering that disappointment that can come.
Yeah, I love that. So plan for the holidays, put boundaries and limits around there to give your time, mental health, and also after what they call getting through the gray, because there's just gray, dark winter, at least for the Northern Hemisphere.
One thing we didn't talk about that I do want to touch on really fast, for if you think of like the family members, the friends that might be lonely, maybe your gift, even as your wife says, like, is giving time. Try not to lose sight of those people. Like, my dad is widowed, and for him, these are really lonely times.
Yeah.
Really lonely times. So if it fits within your values, if it fits within what feels good for you, trying to include those people can be really helpful, also for your mental health, because you're giving, and for theirs, of creating that community kind of feeling around you.
Yeah. And going back to creating the holidays in the way you want, if you know you're going to be alone and connecting is important to you, volunteering somewhere.
Yeah.
It could be, again, if it fits within your values, but volunteering can be very helpful.
Name your needs with your family members. Reach out. It's hard to not be shy in those moments, and it's super important.
Or if it's too toxic with your family of origin, establish a new family and a new group where you can celebrate the holidays and establish new traditions.
Love that. Okay. Well, today we've kind of dove into some ways to protect your mental health, but also to get through the holiday season successfully, however that is defined for you, without hitting that new year and feeling like absolute shit. So today we've talked about tips for protecting your mental health for the holiday season. And this can apply across cultures across the world, not just American traditions. As always, if anyone has any questions or topic suggestions, feel free to email us at Relationships Inside Out, or follow us on Facebook at Relationships Inside Out. Just the same. And the email, relationshipsinsideout@gmail.com. I don't know why I didn't say the whole thing. Hot mess over here. We hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks.